Well, good evening, everybody. We are very happy that you have joined us again for Information Plus. And this evening, we're very happy to have with us Amanda Boyd. Amanda currently serves as the Executive Director for the Alliance for Historic Hillsborough, and in her spare time, moonlights as a freelance writer. She is a transplant, she says, from Missouri. Amanda spent 15 years in the fitness and wellness industry, co-owning a chain of fitness centers and opening her own personal training business. She made a significant career shift in 2020 by trading in dumbbells for history books and joining the Alliance team. Amanda published her first book, Collective History, Stories of the Colonial in 2021. And she's excited to talk a little bit about the book and the lessons that she's learned through that creative process. Amanda, take it away.
Well, hi, guys. This is fun. I haven't done this in a while, so I'm a bit rusty. So I'm Amanda, and I just want to sort of make something clear that I love history, but I am not a history professional. It gets a little jumbled when I say that I work at the Alliance for Historic Hillsborough. People usually just assume that I either have a lot of facts stuck in my mind, like Brandy said, or that I have some degrees that, make me educated. But that's really Annie. So I work with Annie. Everyone knows Annie. And she's really the brains behind the operation. And then I get the other side of the Alliance is the tourism, marketing, and business side. And so I sort of wear that hat. But I've always loved history. I grew up with a dad that was fascinated by all stories, all perspectives, all types of everything. And he forced us to listen to him drone on any time that we would. It was mostly weekends or Sundays. And so I kind of grew up in that realm. But along with that, I was raised, I don't know if I would say it in a unique way, but my family is very big on finding meaning behind things. And so one of the life lessons that we were always taught as a kid was that you can always learn something from someone, and you should sort of sponge off them as much as possible, which sounds really selfish, but it's meaning to be good. Take what you can. Everyone has something unique to offer. And that sort of stuck with me. And in history and things that I've learned just along the way in life, it's more so true in that retrospect, if that makes sense. You can only, in history, I like that you can uncover a rock or find a different perspective of a story that's told time and time and again, or an event. You can sort of destruct what is known to then restruct from the unknown, if that makes any sense. I don't know. It makes sense in my mind, but and so that's kind of what led me to the fascination with history. And so and it brought me to my project of the Colonial Inn. So my freelance writing has always been more in academics and fitness and wellness. I did articles, I did research projects. I've done text and academia and all that fun stuff. And so when I was in the middle of my career escapade of really leaping into a different sector, the book project popped up sort of by accident. So like Freddie mentioned, I'm a transplant from Missouri and moved here in Durham in 2016 and discovered Hillsborough in around 2017. And along with that, I discovered the Colonial Inn. And if you don't know what the Colonial Inn is, we'll talk about that in just a second. I'll let you know all about it. But basically, it was this abandoned inn that sat in the heart of the downtown, the historic district, and it was really crumbling. And with sort of my background in wonderment and asking questions and, sort of that upbringing, I wanted to know what was going on. Like why wasn't it saved? How did it get where it was? And what will be its story later on? So that sort of led to the book. So I'm just going to talk. And Freddie, I have a small PowerPoint, if that's okay, that just so that way you're not looking at my face. That sort of walks through what I learned and how I collected the information for the book. I'm going to pop this here. Okay, can everybody see that? Okay, cool. Like all the hands that went up. Okay, so that's just the cover of it. But so like I said, I'm gonna skip to this. This is how I found the Colonial Inn in its state. So when I found it, there was a lovely cautionary tape that was at the front. And of course, I don't really know why they put tape there because you can just go under it or over it. So that's what I did. And I peered in the windows and it was sort of, I mean, it was just dilapidated. You could see where an old kitchen had been obviously destroyed by fire. I walked around to the back and half of the back had been torn off. And in the middle of what I thought was the dining room or a ballroom sat like this baby grand piano. And it sounds more dramatic than it really is, but I swear it's true. But it was like shiny. It was super clean and it was fixed right under one of the remaining chandeliers. And to me, in my curious mind, I just thought, I wonder what life was like when it didn't look like this. You know, it was almost like the pianist had got up and he would come back to play again. And so I imagined the clinking of the glasses and the laughter and all that fun stuff. And so you come back around and that little dangly sign right there said established in 1759. And so I was like, yep, I got to figure this out. So of course I just took a little Google search and discovered there was a whole community of people that were grappling to hold on to this structure. There was even a nonprofit that was made that was called Save the Colonial Inn, and it was made from citizens, or it was developed or created by citizens wanting to save this structure. And just from, you know, the history lessons and the conversations and just that viewpoint of there's every single angle to a story, I just thought there's no way that people love a structure this much. They definitely love what it represents, and it definitely represents a legacy that needs to be captured. And so as I continued digging, I saw just that, people sharing their stories from all walks of life, people from Hawaii and Florida and London and New York, and they were all saying, I remember when I went to the Colonial Inn, you know. And so it was fascinating to me that one position in a tiny town of Hillsborough could mean so much to so many and really be a driving force of a collective mind and thought and process and desire. And so it was really captivating. And we know that so much of that is true in other aspects as well. So I began digging, of course, and just an overview. Has anybody, I can't see everybody, but has anybody been to the inn?
Yep.
I have.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Oh, good. Okay.
I have even had an event there.
Hey.
And my birthday party is going to be there in November.
Oh, okay. Oh, happy.
You're all invited.
So I love it. See, there's all those stories and people making more stories. So for those who haven't been, just an overview, but it stands in the middle of the heart of the downtown district, which is a historic district, and since 1838. So unfortunately, one thing I uncovered very quickly was that it was not built in the 1759 that the sign promised, which when you're trying to uncover some rocks, you find some spiders. So that was a bummer. But that the iconic building also served as a meeting place, an event center. It helped during the Civil War. It withstood fire, hurricanes, and lots of bankruptcy. And after being closed for nearly 20 years, the Colonial Inn finally reopened amid a global pandemic, which is just fitting for its history, in November of 2020. So it was cool to see that. So this is what it looks like now. So a little bit different than what it did in 2017, 2018. Overall, the inn has had 4 names and 17 different owners. One, who is David Parks, he owned it twice because he loved it so much. And it's transformed in many ways, not just by the names, but also by its footprint. When you walk through its front doors, the front doors are original. So you walk into the original entryway, and then what you're greeted with is sort of, where you check in for the hotel, and to the left is a bar. That's all original 1838. And then there's this beautiful winding staircase that leads up to some upstairs room, and 4 of those rooms are also original 1838, when it would have operated as a tavern and as the Orange Hotel. So these are pictures of that. Obviously, there's the door to the right is an old telephone booth, so that would have been put in a little bit later. Original fireplaces as well. So it's kind of cool. So again, the structure was cool to learn about, but it was really the people. The book itself is divided into sections. It first talks about the timeline and walks you through its transformations. And then it dives into the people and their stories. And so I'm going to talk just a little bit about them because that was the most fascinating part. Overall, the inn has been really owned by families, and it sort of pays tribute to the legacy that it also leaves and why it was wanting to be saved in the first place, and why it has been preserved through, decades of distress. And so I start with Emily Poe because this was kind of a cool story. She was one of the first women, that's her entire family. She was one of the first women to be recognized on a deed. She was the wife to a tobacco legend named Albert Harper Pogue. If you know him, he's more popular in Durham. They were credited with renaming it the Okanichi Hotel. I never understood why it was named Okanichi Hotel. It's also misspelt. I was hoping to get a little bit more information on that, but could never find really anything. And that was in the year 1885. So for a woman to be on a deed in 1885, that was kind of a cool find. And the fact that not only was she a proprietor, but she was the managing owner of it as well. And they live next door, which if you're not familiar with Hillsborough, that's probably not important. But if you are, it's called the Inn at Teardrops, and that was their home. Before venturing into hospitality, the couple ran a cash store, and that was on King Street, which is a main road, and they manufactured and sold tinware. So they had all kinds of stuff. Her husband was known as an agent for Scotch snuff, and he formulated his own tobacco plants, which eventually came to Durham. And then his brother, Joseph Pogue, is probably more familiar in Raleigh. He was the first to bring plug tobacco to Raleigh and street lighting as well to their downtown, and then incorporated the Australian ballot system, which is like a secret ballot system, which you probably all know more of that than I do. I just know that that's what, what it was said. Pogue Street is still in Raleigh, and it was part of the first racetrack. So the whole point of that was really just that you find this deed and this person's name on this deed. But when you start asking questions, you find these amazing stories, and you find these connections of where their life goes on to. As I was researching sort of their timeline in Hillsborough and just in North Carolina in general, they ended up leaving Hillsborough, selling the inn, and moving down to Atlanta, which a lot of their descendants are in there. And I was able to contact their living descendants, and which is where I got the pictures from to Hillsborough or the end. So it was cool to show them that deed and sort of bring their family back, or give them sort of a connection to something that they didn't know, which is kind of cool. Paul Henderson was neat. So we were sort of kindred spirits in that he is from Chicago. So him and his wife moved to North Carolina during their retirement to be closer to their son. He was in the military and aviation. And Paul is credited to some extreme renovations of the inn, similar to the ones that we saw in 2020. He put in indoor plumbing, private toilets in some of the rooms, a telephone line, which was a big deal. And that time was 1946. He owned it until about 1952. So a lot of upgrades. Unfortunately, the inn was not very profitable. They tried to do formal dining. It didn't really work out. And then his son died in a plane accident in the military, and Paul got sick shortly after that, and then passed away while he was the proprietor of the inn. So while that's a very sad story, the really interesting part was what Paul did. Hillsborough, Paul led a fascinating career in aviation. He was marked the father of night mail. He established municipal airports and expanded the airmail system workings. And in partnership with General Electric, he helped to create the lighted airway night flights during World War I. And so when he died, he made national news, and he's buried in Arlington. So it was, again, it's cool to see someone from somewhere else come in, love the inn, see that it needs see that it's worthy of restoration and saving, do what he needed to do. Even though he could have done anything, he could have chosen anything. And so it just sort of seals the fate that throughout decades, this place has been a home to a lot of people, and preserving its legacy has been vital. So the book goes throughout all 17 owners. And of course, they were a lot easier to find because most of them are male and white. What was harder was really the backbone of the inn, and mostly what people remember. So when you and I'm sure that those of you who have visited can relate to, the food is the number one thing people first talk to me about. They're like, I remember brunch, and I remember cobblers and the fried chicken, and going with my grandma after church, and waiting in line forever down the street and all this stuff. And so I wanted to be able to capture those stories, and those were a little bit harder to find, but also harder to get documented. But there's a few that always make me chuckle, so I wanted to share them with everyone. The first one was Joseph Nichols. I don't have a photo of him, unfortunately, and his name might sound familiar. He was an enslaved laborer who went on to become the master carpenter under a local builder named John Barry. He was never credited any of the projects, of course, but it was estimated that he was responsible for the elegant woodwork in places like the historic Orange County Courthouse and then the Methodist Church. So Joseph was born in 1822 to a guy named Rich Nichols, to the Nichols family household, and they owned the Colonial Inn in 1848 or 1841, excuse me. Rich is the one to first expand the footprint. So he expanded the inn from the south into the west, and he also added the front porch. Of course, Joseph was not credited, nor was anybody, but he would have been enslaved at that time. So I did add him into the book because I felt like it was sort of important to put some sort of recognition, because you still see that woodwork today. When people come in, they comment on the floors or the veranda, or just the things that have been outlasting the staircase as well. And so you see this thing, and you can't really pay homage in the correct way without having some sort of recognition. So it was cool to be able to find that connection and that probability that he was part of it, and connect him in some way. And then Maggie Mayo, I was able to meet two of her descendants, her great-grandchildren. She was a cook at the inn. Of course, the inn has always had food because they were a tavern, but we believe that she was there between when it was the Okanichi Hotel and the Corbington Inn. So this would have been the late 1800s, early 1900s. And her descendants I got to talk with talked all about how she would drone on about her cooking stories, how she captivated Hillsborough with her recipes and brought home cooking into the inn, into Hillsborough. And so it was fun, and they talked about those recipes being passed down and all that. So she came from a freed Black family of Hillsborough. It was George Mayo and Fanny Chavis. I hope I'm saying that last name right. And her cousin George, he assisted developing the Central High School, originally the school for the Black community of Hillsborough. I think he had something to do, it's in the book, I'd have to go back and part of it. So that was fascinating to know. And Freddie and Renee, you might know a little bit more about that. But that was a cool thing that, as I asked descendants sort of to dig into their family history, they uncovered things that they didn't necessarily know. So that was a cool thing to learn about. And her cooking was so well known, she actually got a job offer. And both of the descendants were telling me this and laughing that she told everybody this, but that a gentleman had come into the inn late at night and was traveling from Raleigh back to Greensboro and said, I just need something to eat. The dinner service had ended, but she had some leftovers, so she gave him a plate. He ate it and said, I'd love to offer you a job. You can come back with me. I'd like for you to be my personal chef. At that time, she was helping to raise her grandchildren. Her daughter had to move to Pennsylvania for work, so she was helping with the grandchildren and said, I can't leave. And he said, well, if you change your mind, here's my business card. And that man ended up being R.J. Reynolds. And so she liked to say that she could have worked for R.J. Reynolds. Oh, I think we have a question. Salita?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment. She's my great grandmother. So
Are
I'm
you?
Salita. Yes, I'm Salita, and you spoke with my sister Victoria. Yes.
Oh my gosh. Well, now it's to 3.
Yes, so
Yeah, I
she
spoke to
actually.
That's so funny. Oh, well, tell me about her.
Yes, well, I mean, you told the story, so but
Oh,
she helped raise my dad and all of his brothers while Mom Mary was away working. That's correct.
Okay.
In
Okay.
Pennsylvania. Yeah.
Oh, I just loved how Victoria told it. And it was just like, it was so funny. I think I spent hours on like taking up her time during COVID, just like tell me more, find something else.
Yeah.
And so did you know about the George Mayo and the connection to the school?
I did not. No, I didn't.
Okay. Well, that's kind of cool. Well, I'd like to figure out,
Okay,
some
so I
more.
want to say this. Those are the Mayos that we talk about in telling the full story.
Yes.
So that George Mayo would have been the one that was put in jail.
Oh,
I
okay.
think so, because
Okay.
hey, Salita, he would be Roosevelt's and Odell's father, right?
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so that is the George Mayo that was put in jail.
Oh, okay.
Hmm.
You
Cool.
might have to write this book.
Well, this is
Interesting.
yeah, well, obviously, yeah, no.
Yeah,
Oh, that's so cool.
And
Yeah.
Maggie was married to Ishmael, who was, I think, Fanny Chavius and George Mayo's son, I think. Do I have
Okay.
that right, Beverly?
I am not sure about the
Yeah,
change.
there's a connection. Yeah. So
Yeah.
she mentioned the name of, she mentioned Fanny Chavius.
But if Kenny were here, he'd be able to tell you.
Yes.
It's so
But
fun.
anyway, thanks for talking about her. I
Yeah.
love talking about them.
Well,
Yeah.
shoot, I wish I would have seen the hand raised, then you could have told the story. It would have been much
No,
better.
you did a great job.
Annie was my first grade teacher.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
That's
she married Roosevelt Warner. Ryan
okay.
Warner, you
Of
heard
the
about
Warner,
Warner?
of the Warner complex.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, there's so many connections.
And
That's
that's what,
so cool.
and that's why I wanted to add Fanny Chavius Warner to the,
Gotcha.
we were meeting
There's
last
so
week.
many connections. Yes. Well, it's so cool. It's like a rabbit hole. And of course, Hillsborough is small, but still, like during their time, I mean, I guess Durham was there, but still, it's cool to see like how they're connected to all these greater things and how the inn was so pivotal in a connection to people, even at a different time.
Right. Actually,
But
I've never dined in the Colonial Inn until the renovation.
really, okay.
Yes, because my people we couldn't go there for lunch or
Right.
anything. There was a time when they weren't allowed to go there.
Correct. Well, it's interesting that you bring that up because I think that was a big, and me and my ignorance, I was just like, yeah, let's all share stories. Like, this is great. And I learned a lot through just my quest of trying to find out about the workers and trying to connect with descendants or other people, a lot about this area and a lot about, I think, Southern culture that I was ignorant or stupid to. Maybe that's a better word to say it. And so it was an introduction to really storytelling from a Black perspective. And so it was really important to me, which I thought this was more common sense, but I learned that it wasn't, that people would just submit whatever they wanted the book to say, and then I would just put that in there. So if you misspelled a word, it's going to be in there because you put it in. Like I really don't think of myself as an author because that's not true. I'm simply just collecting data to share as like a time capsule almost. And so when I explained it, and Victoria was a big advocate in helping me reach more people that had other stories. She's the one that said, listen, you're going to have a really hard time reaching the Black community because we weren't allowed to be there. And so that was, although I should have known that, you know, it just wasn't, you know, I guess that's a privileged way to think. And so it was a big learning curve for me, and just made it more apparent in that curiosity of there's a side of a story to everything, and it all needs to be heard when it comes to this type of history or history telling, or however you want to categorize what this book is. But anyway, so yeah, I got a lot of that. I got a lot of, you know, we couldn't be in there. Or I also interviewed, and she's not on this list, but Benita Davis, she's a dentist now, but okay. So I interviewed her because she was the first, she came and said, you know, I was the first Black waitress. And so we talked a little bit about her experience and what that looked like and things like that. And although it is mentioned in the book that she was the first, she was still hesitant to really expound on what that looked like and that experience, which I rightfully, you know, you can put whatever it is that you want in the book. It didn't bother me, but she did off the record share some of that, and which was, I think, painted a different picture than maybe another side of the story was being painted. So it was a good perspective going into it of, as it's being renovated, what should it be now to people? If we're going to save this, if we're going to love it, what are we loving it for? And how can we love it for what it has always been? And people like Maggie Mayo is part of that love. And so it was cool. That's so crazy. I love that.
Yeah, I love seeing her portrait there in the end, standing there all dressed up.
Yes, it's this one, I believe. I think it's her that they just took the background. But
That's the only picture we have of her like in formal clothing, you know. Yeah.
She's something. Well, according to Victoria, she was spicy, and I would like to meet her. So
So would I.
She looks like Deborah Mayo Jeffries. Deborah Jeffries. Some of you may know Deborah Mayo Jeffries.
I know Deborah Mayo. Yeah, she's tall.
Yeah, she looks a lot like Miss Corinne's daughter.
She does.
Who else I think she favors Stephanie Salita.
Stephanie.
You know Stephanie Mayo or
Mayo.
not?
Yeah, I know Stephanie. Her daddy's name was named George too.
Right.
Yes.
Lots of Georgias going on.
So he was the son of the George that you're talking about.
Oh, okay.
So another thing that I like to say is, you said Okanichi was misspelled. It's probably around here, before the Okanichi tribe reincorporated, we changed the spelling of the name to be what we wanted it to be.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So if it's spelled Occoneechee, then it's correct.
It's very long, and so I was hoping that there would have been Okanichi ties, which is maybe why that's why I spent so much time on Emily Pogue. I thought maybe that's why she changed the name. She had some sort of ancestral tie to the indigenous, but I could never find that to be true. So I couldn't put it in. I didn't want to put anything in there that I couldn't then have a site for in the bibliography, but bummer.
I was going to tell Freddie that James Walton and his brothers and sisters worked down there in the kitchen. Heard stories that they couldn't go in the dining room, but they worked in the back in the kitchen.
Yeah, I also had quite a few relatives to work there too, as worked in the kitchen, worked as custodians 50, 60, 70 years ago, actually.
See, we just did an extended edition, And then you can put all those stories in it. Cause that's what happened is like, I finished it and then everybody came, more people came out of the woodwork and they were like, hey, wait a second, I have somebody. I'm like, I worked on it for 1.5 years. So I don't know people.
So Amanda, do you know Kelly Akins?
Yes, I tried.
Did
I
you talk to
tried.
him? He worked there.
Yes, yes, he was given. Who gave me his information at that? Somebody gave me his information. He promised me. I contacted via Facebook during COVID. He promised me a story, and then he didn't deliver. And I said, I have to publish. Are you sure? And I didn't ever hear back from him. So I said, if I ever met him, I have a bone to pick. Because he's fascinating. I mean, to go on and he's an amazing cook as far as I know. As that's the stories are like, you have to get his story. And I was like, I tried.
I can't remember the man's name. What was the man's name? Salitha or Gerald? You might know. It was a man that used to work in there, very well known. And I cannot think, he was kind of heavy set, big guy.
I don't remember.
Was
It
he
might
a
have
cook?
been Jackson. I think it might have been Pee Wee Jackson's half brother. You know who I'm talking about, Freddie?
His name wasn't Jackson.
It
He
wasn't.
worked at the Rathskeller in Chapel Hill for a number of years. So he was actually he was a chef.
You talk no, this guy can't. Morris.
Oh, yes. Hold on.
Somebody Morris. That's what his name is, what I'm talking about.
Yes.
But I did eat there, y'all, when I worked at the mill. I went to the Colonial Inn. We went every Wednesday. They had chicken and dumplings on Wednesday. I can't make my chicken and dumplings taste that good. And I think I'm good.
Well, you say that.
She's good, but I think I'm better than her. She is.
Who's
So
good?
Doris Wilson.
Oh, okay. Was it Morris Harris? Was that who you were thinking of?
I think that's who it is. I don't know his last name. His name was Morris.
Must be.
Here's his picture. Do you see that?
When I saw him, he came out of the kitchen and he didn't look anything like that. He was heavy.
It might not be him. It might not be him.
I don't know. I think it's
That's
probably
the only Morris I have.
That's the only Morris that I know of.
I'm missing so many people, or the book I'm not, but this book is missing so many people. But you talk about the chicken and dumplings when you ate. So that recipe was probably from Miss Annie Terrain, who I was able to find a lot of. Her spelling was different. So I just went off of her. I found her death certificate. So I just went off of that. So, but she was fascinating. And she was known really for like the cobblers, the hush puppies, what else? Oh, and the Cornwallis yams. So that was all Annie. And it was during the Crawford time period. And they created the Colonial and cookbook, which is really a coveted piece of history now because there's so far and few between. But those were Annie's recipes. And so I got to talk with people that, Annie has passed, but I got to talk to people that worked with her. And they said that she like steered a hard ship, that she was a head chef and your plate didn't go out unless it looked a certain way. And like, so most of the stories come out of that time when Annie would have been the head chef. So it was really cool to find out a little bit more about her. She eventually leaves the Colonial Inn and she becomes part of the health inspection side of things. And unfortunately had an accident at a work site, which led to her passing. So, but it was cool to see, the inn being part of something that she then went on to assist other people with, and put a name and a face to what everybody talked about when they said, I had the best this, or I had the best that. So it was really cool. But
do you know when the picture was taken? The article was written.
Let me look it up. Yes, I have it sourced in the book, so I have to find her, and I have it in the caption.
Right there.
Mm-hmm.
Here.
But it was so funny because it was like, conversations like this. Sorry, I'm not looking. So that would have been, that's the News and Observer, 1969.
Okay.
Mm.
And if you want, there are some recipes. Her Cornwallis Cornwallis yam recipe is in the book, and so is the apple cobbler. just in case you want to try and make those.
Yeah, I was going to ask Amanda, is that cookbook, has it been published?
No, so I think the museum has a copy and the inn has a copy, and then other than that, I think it had been originally just printed by the inn and sold at the inn. So it'd be cool. I think I have a digital copy somewhere. Someone sent it to me and we had scanned them in to preserve it. I'd have to go back and look, and if it's on my computer or if I sent those to the Alliance. But it would be cool to fashion that just for people to have. Because there's a lot, and it's thick. I mean, there's tons of recipes that you can go back, and sometimes the inn will cook out of it. They'll make a special dish that's just out to pay, you know, tribute to the cooks of the past, I think is sort of what they say. So I don't think it ever tastes the same, but but at least they try.
So, what I'm hearing is that this is maybe a plan for the Alliance to get this reprinted.
I think so.
So Amanda, that's not right. I mean, this is some people hadn't had dinner yet, and you.
Let's talk about it, guys.
I'm visualizing those recipes.
Yeah.
Speedy has a copy, or AKA Kelly Akins has.
Oh.
What I think would be cool is that maybe if there's a follow-up of volume 2, I don't know, if you were able to wed the recipes into the Black community part of the Carolina.
That's a great idea.
The Black folks were the people who were cooking.
I know. And I think it was Victoria that said, no one, you know, that we were cooking because people ate our food. And so it couldn't have been a white person cooking.
Well, I wouldn't say that, but anyway, I just think, you know, that would be a good way to wed that into the Black community and talk more about the Black community's contribution to the Carolina Inn. That's
a great idea. I love that. You're so smart. I'm gonna steal it, and I'm gonna proposition the inn, and I'm gonna ask them if they'll let us do that. That's so cool.
Okay, I want a part of this.
Okay, deal.
I want to write some of this.
I want
absolutely.
I think Amanda and the Hillsborough crew, our next lunch should be at the Colonial Inn.
There we go. That's a good idea. Oh, Beverly.
Okay, so the Colonial Inn no longer has a kitchen. They don't cook.
Correct.
Oh, they don't. Okay.
They actually somebody actually caters in to them every day. So they have to put in a menu of what they want.
Yeah.
So when they are doing those tributes, those old recipes, then they are the caterer, whoever the caterer is doing that. Also, I don't think the Colonial Inn looks a whole lot like it did. Like the back is torn off, and the back was a huge room with I could have walked into that fireplace. It was so big. and they used it all the time. It was wonderful.
Yeah.
So when you walk in and go into the room at your left, that has the bar in it, there was no bar there.
No. It was just an eating hall, and it would have just been really a sitting room. When it was
an eating place. They had it, and it was an eating place. If you went straight in where the steps are and went to the right, and then that room is still there. It's there's another like separate dining room. Now that's still there. And then when you walk into the big room that currently has a floor that looks like it's marble.
Yes.
That was there. And then there was a bigger room. You walk down some steps into the bigger room where that big fireplace was.
Right. Yes. And those were all added, those were added on throughout the times that formal dining room was added up more into the 40s and 50s going into 60s. But unfortunately, even when it was there in the late 90s, apparently the water would come down the walls. It was more fashioned as a lean-to than it really was a structurally sound thing, which sort of sparked the demise of the integrity of things. Annie, did you have the little hand guys up? But I don't know if you already asked yours.
Yes. No, I have a question. I was gonna ask. Teddy has one too. I was gonna
Teddy, hey.
ask Teddy if in your research and your interviews, were there things that were revealed about Hillsborough that you were not expecting? Like, did it paint a portrait of Hillsborough that you were looking to find and assuming that you would find? Or was there stuff that came out about Hillsborough that you didn't expect to know? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Man, that's a deep question. Of course you ask a deep question. This is a lighthearted conversation, Annie.
I'm going to hear about this tomorrow at work, everybody.
Yeah, you are. You're fine. I think for me, like, I just went in it. My first intent wasn't for it to be a book. It was really just to be, I thought it was going to be like a Shutterfly thing. I talked to some people, they put their stories in, we slap a few pictures on it, and away we go, which is kind of what it ended up being anyways. But I thought it was going to take a couple months, and I was 1.5 years into this before I decided I've got to cut this off because I'm going to spend my entire life, dredging up stories. I think for that, it kind of goes back to what I said about the racial divide. Obviously, I knew that there was segregation, but with Hillsborough, I didn't know where those boundaries lie. I knew nothing about Hillsborough at all. Like, I came for like a festival and Outlandish, and then that was it. Like, I wasn't like I was, constantly studying what that looked like. So when those conversations came up, I did learn about that landscape, I think, a lot quicker and in a different way, because I was being educated firsthand by those who were affected by what the town looked like at that time. And so I think instead of having to read it from a different perspective, I got to hear it from the firsthand perspective. And also, forewarned that it would be difficult, that I would get stories out of the Black community without really being integrated into that community. So I wasn't something that I really thought, I honestly just, again, this kind of goes back to that privileged mind of like, I didn't really think about it at all, because I was just wanting to collect stories to put into a simple book to preserve a legacy. And people from everywhere and all races and all backgrounds were sharing these on Facebook. So I thought, oh, well, if I just bring up a common subject, it'll be okay. So I think that was probably a learning lesson for me that I wasn't really anticipating, but I wouldn't say it would be very uncommon to find in this area. It's just that I was dumb enough not to think about it. So
once that started unfolding, did you pivot how you approach the book?
Yeah, I think for me, I wanted to make sure that those who had already talked to me, I circled back and I just said, this had been brought to my attention. Is there a way? I just asked for help. And I don't know if that's right or not, but that's the only thing I know how to do. And so I just said, what are questions I should be asking? How do I ask things? And what are ways that I can gain the trust, so that way, they feel they can share, because I want it to be a platform. And so with the help of like Victoria and others that had already shared their stories, it was sort of an easy conversation. And they were just like, yeah, ask them if they, if somebody chooses to talk, just make sure to invite them to share that side of the story too, in whatever way that looks like. But as far as how the information was being collected, I was already just asking people to submit whatever it was they wanted to include. And as long as it was appropriate, I don't want to know what you did at the end on your evenings there. But as long as it was somewhat appropriate, like, I'm okay with including it. So I felt like it wasn't a huge pivot in that regard. It was more of just how do I invite as a stranger and during COVID? So everything was email, which maybe made it easier. And no one had anything to do. So, but it was just more about the line of questioning that I was asking to try to get more of an open response. If that makes any sense.
So I guess there was a question about that Mona had about how basically most of your information for your book was collected how through just research for the web
Was
and
it
what have you,
interviews
or
or
interviews.
personal interviews or email interviews or how?
It was sort of okay. So it was very creepy. So the stuff I could find, I did as much as I could to establish a timeline. So that was the first, and I just combed through deeds, and those were all digitized. So that was really easy. And then I used Ancestry for as long as I could for the people who had been deceased to try to find any descendants. And from that, I would get on Facebook, I would find their name, and then I would private message them and just say, hey, you are a descendant of someone that works at the inn. Would you like to speak with me? I can email you some questions, or I'd be happy to jump on a phone call or do a Zoom. And then those conversations were recorded, and then I dictated them and then sent them for their review. And so most people wanted to talk. They would call, or we would Zoom. Most of them were phone calls, because they have a lot of questions. Why are you doing this? And what's it for? What's it going to look like? The email ones were more from, I think, people that just had like a simple story, like, oh, we just had brunch. So here's a picture of me having brunch at the end. Here you go. The descendants are the ones that always wanted to talk. They wanted to tell about not just the person like the Maggie Mayos. They wanted to talk about the legacy they left behind and how their story affected or influenced, the rest of them. And that was why it was hours on the phone with Victoria, because it did it. She said, these people set the precedent to then influence family members. So it was cool to see that. But so those were the main ways that I collected information. And then anything that was told, if it was like the relation to George Mayo and the tie to Central High, it was any documentation that I could find to then prove that. If I couldn't, then it would be, a blurb, this was a story, or wouldn't be included in bibliography and cited. So I wanted anything that wasn't just I don't know how to say it without sounding dumb, because I don't know how to explain it, but you have her oral histories, like the R.J. Reynolds. I don't need to prove that. It's such a cool story anyways. And so that's their oral history. But I wanted, before I put in that they were related to George Mayo, when they sort of found that nugget, we wanted to confirm that before we just sort of aloofly put that in, because that would be a really big tie. And so there was some things that us and me and the descendants together would go back and say, okay, we think this is true. Let's now try to figure that out. And then there were other things that were just simple oral history that they were like, we want this story to be in there because it's funny, like the hauntings of the inn and stuff like that. So,
oh, that's cool. That's volume 3.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting to note that up until about 1950, you had a significant Black population in downtown Hillsborough. And then they got wiped out when they put that bridge there in 1962. People began to move away from down there, so to almost where it is right now. You don't see anybody in that community down below the old courthouse down there. Yeah. So that was the labor pool for the Carolina Inn and any other stores down there, as well as providing, I guess, custodial care to the, serving because otherwise it'd be rich folk down there,
right?
Downtown. So everybody else was pretty much far removed from downtown.
Yeah.
So everybody else worked as domestics, for
right
down there. So.
Well, and that's what I think was cool. You know, it kind of goes back to what I mentioned, like in my upbringing, is like everyone contributes something. Everyone has, no matter what side of the story you're on, you know, everybody's viewpoint is different, and that's what makes it so unique and so valuable. So even, you know, when people like Bonita Davis, when she talked about being the first Black waitress, she kind of talked about that, not being raised going to the Colonial Inn, and then she's got this job, and you know, that kind of change that was happening at that time. And so it was, although she didn't record all that she said, it was still very enlightening and valuable to see her take a step in a direction that hadn't been done, but at the same time find a community, that same community still love the inn in a different capacity, even though it was a somewhat restricted place. But you know, does that make sense? Like when we talk about Annie, or we talk about Maggie, especially Maggie, when Victoria said that she talked about her time at the inn and loving the inn, even though there was that divide and that just the heartbreak of what that looked like, you still had people that flourished and continued to love it in a different way. And that's what makes the inn so valuable and worth saving. It's because if they demolished it, those stories would go away with it as well. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I thought it was sort of a beautiful concept of what one little pile of wood could do. Okay. You want me to keep going? I don't want to miss anybody. I don't think anybody else has their hand up. Okay, I just have a few more things, but if anything else comes up, keep putting your hands up. This was fun. I thought I was going to bore everyone, but now, well, you might be bored, but I am just enthralled in your stories at this point. So keep them coming. So as I kept digging, of course, you uncover, you know, and find spiders. And unfortunately, we all know that well, not we all, but if you're familiar with the inn, it sort of went into disrepair. I was able to talk to the McKee family, who were the last inn owners and operated at the inn before it went into bankruptcy. It was heartbreaking to see the pain in their eyes of what they believed they sort of failed the community when the inn had to close. But honestly, the long list of what it needed for upkeep just continued to go. I mean, you have a property that's sitting there from 1838 that has been expanded, and you know, codes change and all kinds of stuff. And so they handed over their keys in early 2000s. Oh, Beverly, do you have your hand up?
I do. I wanted to tell you that when you went into the inn and the baby grand was in the back, see, the inn had been considered the reason for the caution tape was that something had fallen from the inn already, and they didn't want people to walk on the sidewalk and get hit by something. And definitely not go in and not go around and peep in windows where the roof, where the ceiling could fall, where the porch from the top could fall in on you. But Francis Henry ran out of money, or claimed he didn't have any, so he lived in the inn, even though he wasn't supposed to. He was living in the inn secretly and illegally.
Sure.
And so he probably played the piano, because the baby grand, I don't remember baby grand being in there when I used to go.
So maybe it was from him.
So that might have been his, and it might have belonged to the inn, but evidently he was dusting it. And
yeah.
it was in a room where it didn't leak.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really fascinating to see. And yet I know I'm not supposed to go under the tape, but they should put a stricter barrier, because
they should have put an Amanda do not go under the tape.
I'm going.
Okay. But I just wanted everybody to know that, because the inn was really the kitchen was really built on the ground.
Yeah.
So the wooden floor was the first thing to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was that, and there was lots of fires, and it was because he was staying in the inn. And then, of course, whenever it was deemed inhabitable, then you had homeless that would come in and and pillage it. So it was just, it was just a lot. And I think, oh, go ahead.
At the time, I think he was the only homeless person in Hillsborough, really. and I forgot what I was going to say, y'all, but it was important to me anyway.
When you remember it, just say it again. We'll come back.
But I'll be quiet and you can go on now.
No, you're fine. Well, it was a good segue because we're going to talk about Francis Henry, and he was, that the Facebook group of the community members that had really rallied to save the inn throughout the years, talked a lot about him. And there's, again, multiple sides to every story. And so I was able, unfortunately, I wasn't able to meet with him or his daughter, but I was able to speak with someone that worked very closely with him in hopes that they would be able to change his mind about some of the things that they were doing, or just assist him in his approach for what was going on. And so they told the story of how he was able to purchase it, which I really hope that one day I'm this wealthy to accidentally purchase it. But apparently, he became the owner by accident. His father had passed, and he was going through a brutal divorce. And so he decided to go on a vacation outside the country. And his lawyer had said, hey, the Colonial Inn is for sale. This property is for sale at the bank. And I think you should get it. And apparently he was very flippant and said, do whatever you want. And so the lawyer purchased it on his behalf, and he comes back home and his daughter calls him and says, did you know that you own the inn? And he was like, what? And so he had bought it for $450,000, which in today's market is, unbeatable. And for that prime real estate is millions of dollars. So that's how that gentleman got it. And obviously, I think his intent, and this is according to the folks that work directly with him, is that, he sort of saw it as a new beginning once he knew that he was the owner, and that, he was turning his life around, and he could sort of put his love and devotion into the inn, and they could all be a rising phoenix and start something new. And that just really didn't go the way that he had planned. That really
too much romanticizing him. He had also gone in with 2 or 3 other men, I think it was 2, from Chapel Hill, and purchased the rat scaler.
He did. So that's kind of the problem. So he has, I think we all have good and we all have bad, right? And so he had also done, that's why people were leery, right? Because there had been properties he had saved before in Chapel Hill, but there were properties that he actually demolished in Chapel Hill. And so they sort of took up the demolished side and said, he's going to do this. And then the pattern of behavior was creeping closer and closer to that. And the more he neglected it, the worse it got. And the town was like, something's got to give.
He actually petitioned the town. I understand that he petitioned the town to tear down the Colonial Inn on the National Register to build a parking lot.
Yes, I don't know if it was a parking lot, but he did. So the to-do list and the maintenance needs were crazy for just him. I think what had happened was it was just too much of a big scale for him. Prior to this demise and the other historic property in Chapel Hill, he had donated the funds to build a 12,000 foot lacrosse stadium that was at UNC. He was a big Tar Heel advocate, and so it's no longer there, but it was on their grounds for, I don't remember when it was demolished, but he had built it, and that was actually named after him. And so again, it'd be nice if we just had that money lying around that we could just do whatever we want with it. But so I think that some people that knew him were hopeful, and that hope quickly kind of dwindled whenever just things didn't work out and he was in over his head. But ultimately, eventually he did the right thing, and he sells it in 2018 to Allied Deaf Corp, which was really just a group of friends that got together and decided that with their expertise and their money pooled together, that the partners would go in and buy it to turn it into what we know it is now. And so after about a northern number of 8 million, they were able to open it back up in November of 2020 to be what it is now. So I just have like some little shots of it as you go through. This is in the 1800s. And
Yeah, am I hearing you say 8 million?
Yes, the exact facts there, I can pull that up too, the exact numbers, but yeah, it took about 8 million. Now remember, they also built in the back of it additional rooms. It was decided that they wouldn't be able to make any money back if they just kept the original rooms that were up at the top. I think there's 7 up at the top now. And so they added, I think, an additional 20 in the back. So there was a big, that's a big undertaking, but that was 8 million. And then plus whatever they got in incentives and taxes and all that stuff. But yeah, the renovations for them took 8 million.
And Gerald, remember that it always costs more to renovate than to rebuild.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Because
Well, if they added new construction though, that's not renovation.
But they tried to use all the wood that they could that was usable, that was not rotten.
Okay, so the covenants downtown is, you gotta make it historic whatever way they say. So,
right.
8 million, wow, that's a lot of money.
And they tried to do as much as they possibly can. At one time, they took off the not the wall paneling, but what's that called? Like your plastering, and they exposed a bunch of original brick that had been on the outside, and they wanted to leave it exposed, but code wouldn't allow it unless we could date the house back to when that would have been an appropriate style. And so they pulled me in to find out any type of record, and we just couldn't pull it together. So it's like those expenses that they could have preserved the brick, but instead they had to end up plastering, over an entire thing. So there were things like that. Yeah, it says it's a 22 room guest quarters is what's in the back.
Were they able, was the money that they got low interest historic preservation money?
Yeah, so the 8 million is just, this is from what I understand. So it says the Colonial Inn's complete rehab and the addition of the guest quarters. So that addition cost around 8 million. So that would have been, exceeding whatever tax credits they got or grant proposals or rehab funding. So 8 million is what those partners, and I think there's 10 couples. I mean, there's a lot of investors that came in. Some, the Elise and Rutland, who you'll see if you go into the inn now, they're sort of the sweat equity. So they're the operators, and they went in. Elise is the one that found and convinced the group to come together. And the deal was they put in the money. Her and her husband will invest basically their lives to turn it to profitable. And so it's taken a lot of people to get it to where it is today. But it's also why, it's a more boutique feel. And I think with that addition, they're going to be able to hopefully be the first owners that are somewhat in the black. and
Can you tell us what it costs to spend the night in one of those rooms now?
So I think the new builds are the more economic states, and I think it starts at like 150 to 200, just depending on the day and the season. There's the ones inside are like the original rooms are more expensive. They're like 250. So, but I'm not a salesperson. I don't know. Don't take my word for it.
Maybe we should book rooms down there and paint the town and bar hop.
But that's not so bad, because I'm on the Visitor Center Bureau in Chapel Hill. The Carolina Inn's rooms are like $800 a night.
Yeah, they're pretty expensive.
That is, look.
Oh,
look, I'll be staying in Hillsborough then.
We'll go to Hillsborough.
Come to the Colonial.
Colonial.
Look, we can get sleeping bags and everybody get a room. A room.
At least we love it. it is really cool. But ultimately, in general, like I nerd about the Colonial Inn because it's really cool. But I think it goes back to that fascination. Like at the end of the day, the inn is just like a pile of rubble, right? It's just walls like anywhere else. But what made it so fascinating is the stories. Like even just talking tonight, like you pull out these connections and I don't know, it's just something magical about that. And I think sort of like this series that Freddie's put on, it's like everybody tells a different story or a different point of view or a different heritage, and you learn from it. And you can do that with history events or historical places or whatever if you just dig enough and are able to listen to other people. Everyone has something valuable that they can add. And I had wanted the book to reflect that part as well, is that it is about the people and it is about the community. And there's so many places like that their stories aren't told, but that are so meaningful to us, that hold the memories to it. I always laughed because people would send me stuff like, well, I don't have a really interesting story, but I would go there for brunch with my grandma, and just it was very dear to me because she's passed. And even though that story is similar to somebody else's, when they tell it, it feels so different because you can see the emotion or you can feel the emotion or hear it behind their words. And that's what makes the inn special. It's the legacy that's, encapsulated in those doors. And I think that that's what there's parts of history that are sort of for that. Of course, it's informative but again, back to my caveat, I am not a history person by trade. I just really like it. And I just really like the art of the storytelling that people do and from their perspective. So that's my story.
Other questions for Amanda?
Or stories you want to tell?
I want to segue.
Ooh.
I don't know who said it, but I think it would be a great idea for us to go and as a group, spend the night, get somebody to do some kind of something so that we learn about the hauntings. That would be so fun.
Learn about what?
Halloween, huh?
For Halloween, even next Halloween, maybe not this Halloween, too quick, but next Halloween, plan, that would be really fun.
And since the food is catered in, I mentioned possibly having a lunch there next week. I don't know if I want catered food when I'm thinking it's going to be the real deal. Some of those recipes from yesterday, you bring in me something from McDonald's or somewhere.
I actually met a few friends with my daughter for her birthday a few years ago, and the food was delicious, but I think that caterer has since passed, so I don't know who it is now, but the food was top notch.
Oh, really?
It was delicious.
I think was that Bo's Catering. Sorry, I lost internet connection, so I've missed half of this. But I think that's Bo's Catering, and Bo passed away suddenly.
Right.
He was he had delicious food.
So I don't know who's doing it now. Amanda, do you know who the caterer is?
I don't. I think I can ask Elise. So I know that Bo's Catering is still in operation, but has a new head chef. And so I know they have those for special events, but I also believe the original plan was to rotate caterers. Like I think they have a different baker for their cakes and their sweets versus their brunches versus their week foods.
Hmm.
So I think it's sort of a combination of all of that. I don't really know how that works, or if it's any easier than if you just had a kitchen. I don't know.
I do. This is what I do know. And I'm not trying to down a Colonial Inn, y'all, but sitting on the visitors board in Chapel Hill, we normally meet at 8:00 every third Wednesday, and at a different hotel or a different restaurant. And we had been planning to meet before COVID. Not before COVID, right after it opened, but which was during COVID. So we cannot even get whatever the woman's name is to Lisa to actually reply back to us about meeting in Hillsborough at the Colonial Inn, but I guess it's not for breakfast.
Oh yeah, no, they're not open. They think they open at 11. But yeah, it's Elise, and if Laura needs help, just have her reach out. I'd be happy to ask Elise. I'm sure they could figure something out.
Well,
It's on
just,
their
for the-
website that they're open from 11 to 2, Monday through Saturday for lunch, and 4 to 9 for dinner.
So,
I love that you're researching it.
Uh,
so
prices,
maybe,
you see the prices there, Sam?
Freddie, if you can go to the Saratoga Grill, you can afford the Colonial Inn.
Oh, I'm not, I just want to know what the prices are.
Well, I don't know, Freddie.
Oh, of the food?
Yeah, they're on the site, and the well, they got cocktails that start, I guess, at 12, but let me get to the menu. So, for example, their appetizers, the peanut sampler is $12. Salads are what I would consider the same range as most restaurants, so whatever, 6, I guess if it's small, 12, and then you could add on. But the sandwiches that are served all day are like the Hillsburger is $16. The Duck Club is 16. Grilled cheese 12, BLT 13, a hot ham and cheese 14. Their dinner entrees or the filet mignon is 29, I guess if it's small, depending on the ribeye or fillet. The salmon is 25. The chicken it seems to match what most
It's
high
average.
high-end restaurants would charge. Middle to high end is
Yeah.
it's within that
I
range.
suggest dinner and ghost.
What did you say?
Dinner and ghost.
Yeah.
Mona wants to hear the ghost stories, and I do too.
But you
Oh,
know,
okay.
for the
That sounds
purposes of our,
fantastic.
Invite Mona to the spirit tours.
I mean, for the purposes of our, group meeting, I have no problem going there and having it, whatever they have, and just being in there for the experience of
Yeah,
being back
just the
in the
experience. Yeah.
Colonial Inn.
Yeah.
I've been there a couple of times back in the day. I don't know when it was, but I haven't. It would be interesting based on this having us having this presentation to go there. I think it would be appropriate just to go
Yeah.
there and.
You can't expect Freddie fried chicken and collard greens or anything like that. It's just your regular fare. The original restaurant stuff is not there, obviously. Like home cooking food. It's like any American restaurant to me with fancy names.
Yeah. It's a little bit more bougie.
Okay, Amanda, we'll set up something maybe for next week then for lunch
Okay.
with the group. We'll let you know.
That's so funny.
With the understanding that there will be some ghosts in the building.
Has anyone done the haunted Hillsborough tour?
No, I don't think so. I know that he might stand outside and say something, but I know he doesn't go in. I'm not sure, but there is another group that approached Elise whenever they were first remodeling it, and I know his first name is Nelson, but I can't remember. But anyways, he's a paranormal investigator, and he contacted Elise. And so he asked me to look in through some of my records to see what potential hauntings could be, what deaths have occurred, and that kind of stuff. And Elise, or I think not just Elise, but the group had decided that they didn't really want that to be their tag. So they decided not to really play into that. So they don't talk much or at all about any of that. So I don't know if it's on that tour. If it is, he probably doesn't go very close to it, just out of that respect. But
I don't think they want to be known for being a haunted location.
yeah, I don't blame them.
By the
Yeah.
way, they do get good reviews on their menu.
I love that you're web sleuthing them. This is too funny. Sandra's on it. She's like, is it good? I'm hungry.
The rooms are around 150, depending
Okay.
on which suite you get.
Okay.
And they're actually beautiful. We took a tour. Those rooms are really amazing.
They are. They are very nice. And the beds are divine. They will custom if you like, you just when you make your reservation, you can say what temperature you want your room to be. And if you like a soft mattress or a hard mattress, and they'll flip it to whatever side it is. They have dual mattresses.
Oh,
Okay, so Sandra is gonna get a room and host that and the drinks after lunch. And so we just after that.
We all bring our sleeping bags.
yeah.
Oh gosh. I love that this is being recorded and that Sandra read the menu, because in the time somebody's gonna find this recording one day, 100 years from now, and they're gonna be like, a burger was $16 or whatever. I'm sure we won't be using money by then, but you know what I'm saying? That'll be so funny.
Freddie, you can cut this out, right?
No, you can't
No,
do it.
it's all in.
Absolutely can't do it.
It's for the archives.
I forgot we were being recorded.
It's too late now. Oh gosh. So funny. This was so much fun. I'm glad I talked about it.
Great. Absolutely.
Where can we purchase your book?
Anywhere that you want. It's on Amazon. It's
The
on
visitor center.
The visitor center.
Is it the center?
It's at the
Yeah. We got it.
I have not noticed that.
And I bet you could even get it signed by the author, Beverly.
It'll cost you.
Ooh.
Too funny.
Hey, Mona, I'll tell you a ghost story. It's not really a ghost story, but I'll tell you a story.
Okay.
A spooky story. It's my favorite Okanichi story. So at lunch, we'll have
Oh, you're gonna tell at lunch? Okay, sounds good.
lunch next week.
Ooh, the suspense. The suspense. I love it. Too funny.
Anything else anybody need to put on the table or want to put on the table before we call it an evening?
Thank you, Fred, for doing this.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
And thanks to everybody who has presented and those who are going to present, because this has been really good.
Well, in 3 weeks, my hope is that we will have with us Gita Kapoor. You all know that she recently published a book, To Drink from the Well, The Struggle for Racial Equality at the Nation's Oldest Public University. I had the honor of, we had a meeting a year and a half ago, the Historical Society of North Carolina, and she was our speaker. And I tell you, if you want to know something about racism at UNC Chapel Hill that goes deep and long, you got to hear her presentation. You got to read her book. Book is definitely available. But hopefully in 3 weeks, she will be with us to talk about her research at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill.
So is it the 24th?
3 weeks from tonight. Yeah.
Pardon me?
3 weeks from tonight.
Yes.
Is it 25th?
24th. So I'm gonna put it on my calendar now.
Tuesday, October 24th. That's tentative now.
I gotta save the date or else somebody will move in on you.
That's right.
Did you want me to reach out to Brother Youssef?
Yeah, definitely, Gerald. I have not contacted him yet, but would love to hear his story.
Okay.
Would love to. And really, for those of you who know people you would like to invite, send me their information, and I will send the link to them as well. I mean, not only to come and actually listen, but for those who might want to make a presentation on on whatever it is. We have Salitha, who is scheduled to do something at some point in time. She may not have known it, but yeah, she's on the schedule. and
Oh,
and actually, in December, to end things, my son is going to do a presentation on research he's been doing. He's a professor up at UNC Greensboro, and he is he's in music, and has just recently published an article on the whole experience of individuals who are Black individuals and people of color in music programs across the United States. So he's interviewed a lot of people, and the article will be published in a couple of months. So he's going to share that with us, and hopefully rapport, and we'll have somebody in November. So we have hopefully 3 more presentations over the next few months. All right. Is that all right with y'all?
It is. I have
Sounds good.
when Salitha, is your birthday
Yes.
today, or was it? Or
It
when
was the
is it?
28th.
Well,
Well, happy birthday to you.
Thank you. I welcome 64. I welcomed it.
Yeah, and then I think Horace was September 14th or somewhere like that.
The
So,
18th. He
the
and Nikki
18th?
share a birthday. Yeah.
okay. So happy birthday to the September babies. All right, good people. Always good to see all of you. Look forward to getting together for lunch next week at the Colonial Inn.
All right.
And Amanda, thank you so much. Thank you so much. We really enjoyed your presentation.
Thank y'all. Thanks, Freddie.
Yeah.
Take care.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
All right, take care now. We'll see you the next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.